My wife died on a Tuesday. The funeral wasn't the hardest part. It was Wednesday morning. I woke up at 6:12, reached across the bed for her without thinking, and my hand touched an empty pillow. For 1 second I forgot. Then I remembered everything. She was gone. And the strangest thing happened next. I looked across the room at the wardrobe I'd spent years paying for. The house we'd worked so hard to buy. The second job I'd taken to afford it. And I realized something that made me sick. I had spent 14 years building a life I was never actually present for. My name is Yusuf. I'm 41. I live in Bradford. And this is what my wife left me behind. My wife's name was Maryam. We met when we were both 23. I knew within a few months that I wanted to marry her. She had this way of making ordinary things feel important. A cup of tea. A walk to the shops. Sitting together after dinner. She never needed expensive restaurants or fancy holidays. She just wanted me around. I should have listened more carefully. We married when we were 25. For the first few years, money was tight. I worked construction during the day. Then I started doing evening deliveries. At first it was temporary, just until we had enough for a bigger house, then enough for a deposit, then enough for the house we really wanted. Maryam used to joke, "At this rate, you're going to build the house yourself." I'd laugh. I'd tell her, "You'll thank me when we're sitting in our garden." She'd smile. Then she'd say, "I'd rather have you home tired than have the garden." I heard her. I just didn't listen. By our 10th year together, I was working 6 days a week. Construction Monday to Saturday. Deliveries several evenings. Sometimes I'd get home after the children were asleep. We had 2 children by then. A son Adam and our daughter Hannah. I'd tell myself, this is sacrifice. Every extra shift was for them. Every late night was for their future. Every pound saved was supposed to mean something. And it did. We eventually bought the house. 5 bedrooms, a decent garden, a driveway. The kind of house I'd imagined when Maryam and I were newly married and had almost nothing. I should have felt like I'd won. Instead, I was hardly ever there to enjoy it. Maryam would sometimes wait up for me. I'd come through the door exhausted. She'd ask, "How was your day?" I'd say, "Long." She'd ask, "Do you want tea?" I'd say, "In a minute." There were too many minutes. Maryam was diagnosed with cancer in January. I'll never forget the way the doctor said it. Quietly, carefully, like changing the volume could somehow change the meaning. I took 2 weeks off work. I told myself I'd be there for everything. But 2 weeks went quickly. We had already put an offer on the house. There were bills. The mortgage. The children's expenses. I convinced myself that going back to work was what a husband was supposed to do. So I went back. Maryam started treatment. She had chemotherapy appointments. Some days she was exhausted. Some days she couldn't eat. Some days she just wanted to sleep. Her sister took her to several appointments. Not because Maryam didn't want me there. Because I was working. I told myself, I'm working for her. That sentence protected me from the truth. The day they told us that cancer had spread, I wasn't there. I was covering a shift. Maryam's sister called me. She said, "You need to come." I remember standing outside a supermarket with my delivery bag in my hand. I looked at the clock, then at my phone, and suddenly every extra shift I'd ever worked felt very small. I drove to the hospital. Maryam was sitting in the bed. She looked tired, but when she saw me, she smiled. That's the part I can't explain. She had every reason to be angry with me. Instead, she reached for my hand. I sat beside her. She said, "You're here." I said, "Of course." She smiled. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. I should have been there earlier. Her condition got worse. I cut back my hours. But by then, there wasn't much time left. I started doing things I'd once considered ordinary. Making her tea, sitting beside her, watching television together, taking her outside when she wanted fresh air. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, and I began to understand something. She hadn't needed a bigger house. She'd needed me sitting beside her. All those years I'd been trying to give her a better life, while she was asking me to share the one we already had. Maryam died on a Tuesday morning. She was 40. I was holding her hand. There was no dramatic final speech, no perfect goodbye. She simply became still, and the room became unbearably quiet. I kept holding her hand. I don't know how long. Eventually someone touched my shoulder. I didn't move, because if I moved, I knew I'd have to accept that she wasn't coming back. The funeral happened later that week. People came. Food appeared at the house. People hugged me. People prayed. People told me to be strong. I appreciated every one of them. But Wednesday morning was different. There was nobody in the house. No Maryam. No voice. No footsteps. No. "Yusuf, have you seen my phone?" I reached across the bed. Empty pillow. Empty side. Empty room. And suddenly I noticed something I'd never really looked at. Her bedside table. There was a book on it. The spine was cracked. Several pages had been folded down. I'd never seen it before. I picked it up. I didn't even know when she'd bought it. I sat on her side of the bed. I opened the book. It fell naturally to a page she'd marked. At the top, she'd written, "Reminder 93. Underneath was a passage about how temporary everything in this life is. Possessions, money, homes, plans, even our own time." Then I noticed something in the margin. Maryam had written, "Don't spend your whole life preparing for a future you aren't present enough to live." I read it once, then again, then a third time, and I started crying because I knew exactly what she meant. I walked downstairs, 5 bedrooms, big kitchen, garden, everything I'd spent 14 years chasing. I stood in the hallway, and for the first time the house looked enormous. Not impressive, empty. I remembered Maryam standing in the kitchen years earlier. I'd been rushing out for another delivery. She'd said, "You don't have to go tonight." I'd replied, "We need the money." She'd looked at me for a moment, then said, "We need you too." I'd kissed her forehead and left. I sat down on the stairs because I finally understood. I had never been choosing between work and family. I'd been choosing what I believed was more important, and I'd made that choice thousands of times. There was another page in the book. This one wasn't printed. It was handwritten. Maryam had written, "Yusuf thinks he is giving us a future. I wish he knew we only ever needed more of his present." I couldn't breathe, because she hadn't written it for me. She hadn't known I would find it. She wasn't trying to teach me a lesson. She was simply writing down something she'd been carrying quietly for years. The next morning I picked Hannah up from school. I'd never regularly done the school run. Not because I didn't love her. Because I was working. She got into the car. She looked at me. Then asked, "Are you not working today?" I said, "No." She nodded. Then asked, "Tomorrow?" I said, "No." She looked at me. I said, "I'm going to be home more." She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just reached over and held my hand. That hurt more than anything, because children shouldn't have to celebrate their father. Finally becoming available, I called my employer. I told them I needed more time. Then I made another call. I turned down the delivery work permanently. It scared me. We still had a mortgage, bills, children, real responsibilities. But for the first time in 14 years, I wasn't calculating what something would cost me in money. I was calculating what it would cost me in time. 6 months after Maryam died, I sold the second car. I stopped working weekends. I started cooking dinner. I went to school meetings. I sat with my children. Sometimes we talked about their mother. Sometimes we didn't. I learned their favorite foods, their worries, their jokes, things Maryam had known all along. One evening, Hannah asked me, "Why are you home so much now?" I looked at her, then said, "I used to think I was building something for us. Now I just want to be with us." She moved her chair closer. That was all. But I understood. Her side of the wardrobe is still full. I haven't been able to move most of it. Her dresses, her scarves, her coat, the little things that make no sense to anyone else. But one thing I moved. Her cardigan. I put it on a hook beside the front door. It's the first thing I see when I leave, and the last thing I see when I come home. Sometimes I touch it, not because I think she's coming back, because I don't want to forget what home used to mean. People sometimes tell me, "At least you gave her everything." I don't know how to answer that anymore, because did I? I gave her a house. I gave her security. I gave her things. But there were evenings when she wanted me, and I gave her an explanation. There were weekends when she wanted my time, and I gave her another shift. There were ordinary Tuesday nights that I thought didn't matter. They mattered. They were the marriage. I'm Muslim, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about the dunya since Maryam died. We talk about building, saving, owning, achieving, leaving something behind. But everything here is temporary. The house, the money, the car, the job, even our bodies. We don't take any of it with us. What stays are the things we did with the time Allah gave us. Maryam understood that before I did. I was so busy preparing for tomorrow that I didn't notice today was already passing. I still have Mary's book. It's on my bedside table now. Sometimes I open it. Sometimes I can't. But there's one sentence I return to, the one she wrote herself. Don't spend your whole life preparing for a future you aren't present enough to live. I wish I'd understood it when she was alive. I wish I'd listened when she said, "I'd rather have you home tired than have the garden." I thought she was asking me to dream smaller. She wasn't. She was asking me to understand what was already enough. I'm 41. I still have the house. I still have the mortgage. I still have bills. I still work. But I don't work every hour I possibly can anymore. When my daughter asks me to sit with her, I sit. When my son wants to talk, I listen. When my family needs me, I try to be there, not because I stopped caring about providing, because I finally understand that providing and being present are not the same thing. Maryam died on a Tuesday. The hardest part wasn't the funeral. It was the morning after, when I reached across the bed and found nothing, and realized that for 14 years, I'd been reaching for a future. Meanwhile, the woman I loved was standing beside me, asking me to live in the present. I can't go back. I can't give Maryam those evenings, those school runs, those ordinary cups of tea. I can't give her the time I thought I was saving for later. But I can make sure her absence teaches me something. So now, when life asks me to choose between another thing and another moment with the people I love, I think about her, and I choose the moment, because the house was never the inheritance. The time was. May Allah grant Maryam Jannah, and may He give the rest of us the wisdom to understand what we have, before we're forced to understand what we've lost. Man's Corner. If you knew you had only 1 year left with the person you loved, what would you stop postponing today?